All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashlyn Schoenfelder. I am a career advisor and employer relations coordinator at the University of South Dakota. Thank you for joining us for our virtual info session. We will be recording this. We have Jen and Joe from the State of Alaska Office of Children's Services, and they will be giving a presentation. So I will go ahead and let Jen take over.
Hello, well, I'm Jen. I'm a project assistant with this State of Alaska Office of Children's Services dealing with recruitment and retention. And today with me, I have Joe Malatesta. You want to go introduce yourself, Joe?
Yeah, again, my name is Joe Malatesta. I work within the initial assessments unit here in Kenai, Alaska. So I'm just one of the, field workers within the Office of Children's Services here.
Awesome. So as you can see on the screen, it's kind of our mission statement. We ensure the safety, permanency, and well-being of children by strengthening families, engaging communities, and partnering with tribes. All these elements are very important to us. Who are we? Like I said, we've got our mission. We have a vision of having safe children and strong families, which are underpinned by guiding principles and core values. The core values, hope, integrity, respect, and empathy, hold up everything. But the guiding principles, obviously safety, where we want every child to have the right to be safe. Family, where children remain in their home whenever safely possible. Strengths, families have specific strengths and cultures that are valued. Connection, children need a lifelong connection to their family, community, and culture. Permanency, it's a big one. Foster care is temporary. Every child deserves a safe and permanent home. Well-being, empowerment is central to the well-being of children and youth. Community partnerships are essential to engaging and supporting families, and tribes, really big up in Alaska. Tribes and OCS have respectful government-to-government relationship. Okay. Where are we? We're all over Alaska. We have regional offices, and each regional office serves a number of rural or remote offices, depending on what you like to call it. And state offices in Anchor and Juneau. As you can see, we're spread all the way from the north, all the way down to southeast, where Juneau, Ketchikan, and the other southeastern communities are. It's escaping me, Joe. What's the one at the very top? Is that Utqiagvik?
Yes.
It's Utqiagvik. It used to be called Barrow, the place where the sun sets and then doesn't come up till spring. So we have even geographically, we have a huge number of different kind of communities. All the communities have different weather, different terrain, different peoples, different cultures, even different amounts of sunlight, depending on winter and summer and winter. Within Alaska, you could be hired into one location, but if you move, there are potentials for moving into other locations. Each community does have its own culture. Each team has its own culture. Joe, you grew up in Kenai, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what's it like in Kenai?
Well, I would say, I love Kenai. As far as, are we asking on the work perspective or?
A little bit of both. What's it like there and what's it like to work there?
Okay. So on a personal standpoint, Kenai has a lot to offer in regards to like fishing, hiking, hunting, a lot of outdoor activities, kayaking, all that kind of good stuff. As far as working, Kenai specifically covers a relatively large area. So we'll cover, it's unfortunate that map can't be blown up more, but essentially we cover from Kenai to Ninilchik to Seward and Hope. So I would say, Seward Hope is about, I don't know,
how long does it take to drive?
Miles away, and then Ninilchik is like 70 miles away. Kenai, since it's one of the larger hubs in South Central Alaska, we are often voluntold to travel elsewhere when other offices are needing assistance, just because, number-wise, we're not large, but I would say we're one of the more sought out offices given our location. And I would say, especially for individuals coming from outside of the state of Alaska, I would say it's an easier community to adapt to compared to the more very rural regions like the Bethel, the Nome, the Barrow, all of those types of regions, a lot more remote. So it can be more of a culture shock for individuals traveling from outside the state of Alaska. Um, but I would say, especially right now, within the initial assessment unit, our office culture is killer. It's probably some of the best I've seen in like the last 5 years. So it's been very awesome. Our unit is very close knit, and we work very well together to accomplish the overall goal. So that's been pretty cool recently.
Awesome. And JP is another worker who works out of Anchorage. JP, we're talking to a recording, so if you want to introduce yourself and tell us what it's like working in Anchorage.
Oh man. Well, sorry I'm late, first of all. That's what it's like working in Anchorage. Yeah, my name's JP Willett. I've been here for a little over 2.5 years. I work on an ICWA unit, which means all of my families are Indian Child Welfare Act families. And Anchorage is awesome. It's like a perfect, I'm from Missoula, Montana. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but Anchorage is like a cross between Missoula and Seattle for many reasons. I love this job. I think if you like utilizing and growing and testing all of your skills at once a lot, then this is a good job. If you like knowing that you have the opportunity to have an impact on many generations to come just by your everyday work, then this is a good job. If you like knowing that what you're doing is actually one of the most vital aspects of contributing to a healthy community, is a good job. So those are all things I love about my job in general. And again, working in Anchorage is nice because we have a lot of diversity. We have two of the most diverse high schools in North America in Anchorage. Yeah, there's a little bit of everything here. You can, I got to get my brain out of the meeting I was just in.
That's okay, JP. I was going to say, both Kenai and Anchorage are on the road system. A lot of our communities are not connected by roads. There's only, you can either fly or sometimes there might be a boat, but they're off the road system. And there are times when if somebody's has traveled out to those locations and the weather changes, they might be stuck there for a couple of days. If you can't get out in a flight, you're not going anywhere. So some of the more rural locations where they travel a lot, like Fairbanks, they travel outside a lot. I'm sure Joe travels a lot too. They just have to roll with how it goes. Does that sound about right?
100%.
Yeah.
I've been stuck out in St. Paul Island for a couple weeks, and especially during COVID, it was one of those situations that I was pretty much like forced to stay in my jail-sized room the whole time. Wasn't allowed to go into the community. Was essentially told that I needed to pack all of my own food because I wouldn't be allowed to go into the grocery store, and that was the expectation. Like that was. And when you go out to places like that, you don't pack for the time you're intended to be there. You pack for like a week or two more because weather can literally suck you in that long. that is not abnormal. So that is a very, very big point. Yep.
Yeah, it's kind of an adventure. People like that. If you go to one of the rural locations, you travel a lot more. If you don't like so much travel, you probably want to stick to maybe Anchorage. They still have travel, but it's not as frequent. You get to see a lot of Alaska that way. Depends on what people like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just about to say that sounds cool being stranded on St. Paul Island, but that didn't sound very cool the way you described it.
Probably not during COVID. I think generally you get to explore more when you're not quarantined. But be prepared for anything. Okay. So we have the various caseworker roles. We have intake, like it says, takes the reports, determines if we need to do anything. Investigations and assessment, family service, and people who have to cover both. Who wants to talk about investigations and assessment?
I will.
Okay.
So this is the unit that I'm a part of and have been a part of for the past 5 years. Essentially, once I'll kind of discuss the intake role as well. So essentially, if anyone ever has concerns about child safety, they call our centralized intake number. Our centralized intake's responsibility is to determine whether or not criteria is met for a PSR, a protective services report, to be screened in or screened out. Once that report is screened in, essentially it will go to a worker like myself, who then is tasked with initiating the case by making face-to-face contact with the alleged victims and other children in the home, followed by the non-maltreating caregiver, then followed by the maltreating caregiver, and then like other collaterals, whether that be like school teachers, principals, hospital, workers, family members, anybody, like literally anyone who maybe has contact with this family, just to continue assessing and gathering information to determine whether children are safe or unsafe in homes. If a child is to be determined to be unsafe for any reason, it is my job then to work with the family to either try to come up with some form of safety plan to mitigate the safety concerns that have been identified. And if that is not possible, then we might have to assume emergency custody or go another route where we can file like a non-emergency petition and essentially then go into court and plead the case as to why we being the department believes that children are unsafe and would be best suited in the department's custody. And then we can make placement decisions after that. I'd say that's the quickest and simplest way to explain what we do in INA.
It's kind of like the ER, and then family services is more like on the wards. I think of it as from a nursing perspective. But so if we are ongoing going to be involved, that's when it moves over to family services. I don't think either of you guys work family services.
Yeah, I work
did.
them.
I was gonna say I did it for a period of time, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different, right?
I can only imagine, like I only do IA every now and then when we're on call.
Yeah.
And I take a lot of call, so I guess I do IA more often, but I do IA often enough to know that I'm glad I'm in family services. You guys have it tough. It's a tough job, but the people who do it like it, and they say, hey, I wouldn't want to do family services because we're in family services, we stick with a family through the long haul. And IA's kind of a get her done type environment. And I can certainly appreciate that. So, but I do like sticking with a family over the long haul, building those relationships and having kind of this long end game approach with families, or a short. I mean, if you can make it short, great. Some families can get in, get out, and address what needs to be addressed, but more often than not, we have cases that are anywhere from 6 to 24 months in family services. And we work with the parents, we work with the kids, we work with the tribes, we work with counselors, schools, everybody who could possibly be involved with a case. And being case managers, we're team leaders, so we're making sure that everybody's working together for the benefit of this family, and that there's enough support measured with enough accountability for success. And to me, I love it. I've done a lot of things, including owning my own business, and this is my favorite job that I've done so far.
I always like hearing that. And the generalist is generally in our smaller rural locations where there aren't a lot of staff out there. So they tend to have to balance the IA, the investigation assessment, with the family services. I can't even imagine trying to be the kind of person who does both, because they're very different roles.
Uh-huh.
But I'm guessing the people who do it, they love balancing both. So, or they just have to. Yeah.
And if I may, one of the biggest things that I would say that I didn't know coming into it, but what I found most enjoyable about IA. IA is like, the way I look at it is like, we are doing law enforcement. Like, we are walking into the same type of situations that law enforcement's walking into almost on a regular basis. But just no backup, no defense mechanisms other than, the verbal judo, as you will, that the trainers like to try to talk about. But I think that's something that is often not discussed enough, and people do not understand that. Whereas, like kind of JP was talking about, like family services is like that social work role. Like IA, you're doing law enforcement, and you need to be able to have like that social work mindset to be able to work with families in a different capacity. But while you're fulfilling the same job that law enforcement does, essentially, is like the best way I can describe that. But then, like JP said, that family services is really that full-on social work perspective on how you're working with the family to hopefully achieve reunification again. So.
Yeah, I really have a lot of respect for folks in IA being able to balance that that dynamic, the social work aspect of how do I effectively introduce families to this environment such that they're not going to be, even further traumatized while doing what needs to be done and protecting these kids. That to me, they can easily be two competing realities.
So this is just about general duties, protective service specialists, because you guys all have a wide variety of roles. A lot of it is working with other people, whether it's investigation assessment or family services. You guys have to collaborate with a lot of different people, the courts, the tribes, community services, all sorts of people. And I'll let you take on from that. So daily basis, who do you work with?
Yeah, we're obviously working with our coworkers, and outside of that, we're working with schools a lot. I'm working with the courts a lot. Working with the tribes a lot, because here in Kenai, we do have a large Alaska Native and American Indian population as well. Because I would say we're not as big of a commuter city as Anchorage is. Obviously, Anchorage is just the biggest city in Alaska, so it's kind of the thing. But the Kenai Peninsula is probably the second biggest commuter city, I would argue. So we get a lot of that. So we're working with those tribes to make sure that the tribe's input is being advocated for. And just for anyone who doesn't know, JP mentioned ICWA earlier, the Indian Child Welfare Act. In the simplest form, that's a set of legislation that was put into place to ensure that tribal children are staying with tribal families due to what I would call the crisis back in history of how so many children were being removed, tribal children were being removed from their families, placed into boarding schools, creating a sense of generational trauma. So that's why ICWA was kind of brought about and why it's so important. Family members, other community members that, might play a role, hospitals, physical therapy, like any sort of rehabilitation, counselors, really anybody. Like, to be willing and ready to work with anyone. So yeah.
Communication is a big thing.
Yeah, and one of the things I find most fascinating is communicating with people that expect to have an adversarial relationship. So we have OCS, and we are representing what we hope is the safety and well-being of a child, but each parent gets an attorney too. And oftentimes those relationships can be adversarial, but one of the things that I really enjoy most is flipping that on its head and welcoming those attorneys into this team of people that are there to support the families. And the difference just stands out. The difference is amazing. If you can orchestrate that relationship and continue, and we can even go toe to toe in court and walk out kind of high-fiving each other like, wow, you really made that hard for me. Nice job. I appreciate what you do for parents. And they'll give back the same. And they'll say, well, you you make it even harder when my parents can't say anything bad about you. So that is a fun. That's something that I think we have struggled with a lot, is understanding that dynamic, and we're just now starting to learn how to roll with that a little better and not take the court process so personally and not get wrapped up in these the relational dynamics of litigation, I should say. Being a social worker is very different than being an attorney as far as how you look at those relationships. So we're just starting to do some training around that, which is kind of cool. But anyhow, he covered most of the people you work with, and the 2 cents about working with attorneys to me is a lot of fun.
I'm going to piggyback off that because that's a very good point, JP, because a lot of new workers, especially depending on their background, period, on what they've done in their past, that is one of the hardest things that I've seen new workers struggle with, is working with attorneys and presenting in court, like testifying and being cross-examined and doing all those things, because it's very nerve-wracking. And attorneys have jobs to do, and that job is to make it look like we haven't done our job. And people take that very personally, and like, you can't do that. Like, you have to understand, like, we have our job, they have their job. And at the end of the day, you, like JP said, you can high five each other because it is what it is, but we have jobs to do at the end of the day. But a lot of people, I just don't think, understand that. And I think it's just due to a lack of experience in that area. Not many people that I've seen come in and start working here work with courts and within courts and with attorneys, and kind of understand that concept to be able to, I guess you could say, tolerate it and accept it. So knowing that would be huge, and to be less of a shock while coming into the job. So
What's another element you think is hard for new workers amongst all these job duties, the million job duties you have to do? What's another one that you think is hard?
The biggest one that I
For
will
new
say,
workers, yeah.
and I will say this is office dependent, and I will say that when I started this job working where I am, my office was in a very different place than it is now. Why I say that is my first day, I was given 85 cases and was expected to assume emergency custody on day 3 of working. I had no clue what I was doing, but that's what my boss told me to do. I figured it out. I did it. And that is, depending on what office you are in, that is not atypical. That is very normal. You will not be taught well what you're supposed to be doing. It is almost all by trial and error, especially in IA. I mean, I would say in family services too, depending on your department, depending the office and that office culture. Like I said, Kenai's come a long way to like help support new workers and whatnot. But the reality is a lot of offices are not like that still. And a burnout happens very quickly because of the fact that we are given this 10-mile long list of things that we need to be doing every second of the day, and given no roadmap, given almost no instruction. And you have to be okay with making mistakes. That's one of the biggest things I tell all my new workers that I'm kind of training is you need to be okay with making mistakes. The biggest thing is learning from those mistakes and not doing that same mistake again, essentially. Like, that's how you're going to learn. And to always make sure you're staffing cases with coworkers, supervisors, to ensure that you're not making like a catastrophic mistake. When I'm talking about mistakes, I'm talking about things that are relatively not a big deal. As long as you're staffing with people to make sure that those big mistakes aren't taking place. But I would say that's another big thing, that reality of like, man, I'm expected to know all of these things and I haven't been trained at all. And now I'm here working it. Like, I'm doing it. So you have to really be willing to jump into fire and put yourself out on your own as you build yourself up within the within the department. I think and JP or Jen, jump in, but I would say that majority of people who quit, it's within 6 months. If you can make it past 6 months, it's almost like that's when the fire starts to fade. If you can get to a year, I mean, you might have little embers, but you're doing good. And then year and a half, vet. I mean, you're good to go. So
I have a question to bounce off of that.
yeah.
So knowing that it will be college students watching this recording, is there anything students can do in college to help them prepare for this field? What can they be doing in their free time, or can they pay attention more in school, like internships, anything like that, to not dismay them from getting the burnout and like not wanting to do this because they know that this is a hard job? So what keeps you going each day? What can students do to prepare for this?
Can I jump on that?
Yep.
There's a couple of things I would say. One is to really be attached to your why. Why are you doing this? Because none of us are here to make money. I mean, we wouldn't do this for free, but we're not here because it's prestigious. We're here because we absolutely believe that we're making a difference in our community, and a really vital difference. So when it gets really, really hard, and there might be another job out there that pays as much or isn't as hard or whatever, we stay here because our heart is connected to the outcome. So really coming into this knowing what outcomes you want to see in your community and how you see yourself contributing to that is vital. I think the second thing in order to prepare for this is to get really good at sales. I've asked our leadership to actually start recruiting from sales events, or recruiting from not retail. What's the word? Maybe it is sales, customer service. That's what I'm trying to say. One of the ways people burn out really quickly is because they don't have the perspective. They don't have a customer service perspective coming into this job. So everything turns into a battle, and turns into a disappointment, and turns into hurt feelings. If you can have a strong customer service perspective balanced with a very trauma-informed perspective when you come into this job, you'll have, I think, healthier expectations of what you're going to be doing when you're working with families.
And I'm just going to add to that. I'm going to validate what JP said and make it very clear. Like, the fact that I was born and raised on the Kenai Peninsula, that is why I'm here doing this job. Like, I am tied to my community. This is what I want. This is my way of kind of giving back to my community that I grew up in and that raised me. So that is a huge piece to why I stuck through the first couple of years of, I mean, it was hell. Like, where my office was for those first couple of years, it was nothing short of hell. But that's what kept me moving. I will also say that I love this job because it keeps me on my toes. I get bored very easily. So it's like, that's also my why, right? Like, I love not knowing what today is going to bring. That's something, and I will say that is difference between INA and family services. Like, family services, at least when I was up there, and JP, you correct me if I'm wrong, it's easier to schedule out your day and your week. IA, no, like, it is very difficult. That's really not going to be a thing. And if you do, be ready to get disappointed. You have to be ready to adapt and go, well, this is bad for today, but now this new, a P1, which is we need to get it done within 24 hours or usually immediately, needs right now. So all that goes out the window, and this is what I'm doing now. So you need to be able to be flexible. But if students had an opportunity to do any form of internships with your local CPS or OCS, however you guys call it in your state, that would be the only equivalent that I could imagine, like, that could kind of be close to this. Because, I had a very criminal justice upbringing educationally and stuff, and nothing prepared me for what I'm doing right now. I would say my personal characteristics that I've always had made me very suitable. And like JP said, I mean, it's communication, being able to be personable and work with people and talk to people and de-escalate very tense situations verbally. Like, you have to be willing to stay still and calm when someone is literally screaming in your face to achieve a goal. And like, I always like to give this example because I think it says a lot, but essentially I was working with an individual who like got up in my face, started screaming and threatening how he has like poured gasoline on a man and threw a match on him and lit him up and then shot him. And he just sat there face to face with me screaming. And this went on for about 5 minutes and I just stared at him the entire time. And when he finished, I just said, are you done? Are you calm now? Or can we proceed with our conversation? And the man literally de-escalated after I let him scream at me for 5 minutes and we proceeded. And you have to be able to have that mindset, that mentality that is going to happen on a regular basis, at least in IA. I don't know if JP experiences that as much in the family services side of things. That is something that I experience on a very weekly basis. And I love it. I love that. So it's very fun for me to de-escalate those situations. So you just have to be willing to do that. But yeah, really, I don't know what else can mimic this as far as what to prepare yourself other than having the information to expect what's coming. Because I will say that I had no idea what this job did when I was hired. And that was what was most like shocking. I was like, holy moly, like I had no idea that essentially I'm law enforcement now without a badge and a gun going into the same situations. And like most of my families will say they would rather see law enforcement at their house than me, because in their mind, going to jail is less frightening than having their children removed. So like, I mean, it's so having the information to mentally prepare yourself for what you're actually signing up for is pretty critical. But otherwise, internships, and not just internships that allow you to stay in the office, like actively let you go out on cases, actively let you do interviews, actively let you do all of these things so you can maybe better prepare.
Yeah, attending child welfare court hearings would be good too. And just watching, I think that's another thing that we're doing in our training now is we're starting more fishbowl exercises where our attorney comes in and they do they take a seasoned worker and they have them run through. Like the seasoned worker doesn't get prepped for this. They just get asked a bunch of questions about a fake case that they have to think on their feet and answer, have answers for what the heck happened with this case. And so people get to see that in real time, and it'd be good for students to get to see that in real time and realize that, oh, this is how the quote unquote game is played. No one got hurt. And everybody's here. The way everybody challenges each other is absolutely necessary for our justice system to work as it should, and for parents to get a fair shake. So I think attending court hearings would be helpful.
Does that cover your question, Ashlyn?
You bet. That was more than enough. So thank you guys for sharing your insight. I appreciate it.
Okay, so on to the more administrative side of it, benefits. We have protective service specialist level 1s, which are the trainee level. They're usually 1/2s because the 2 is the journeyman level. So you start off with a 1. Base salary is $50,000 a year. It jumps up after a year when you go up to level 2, jumps up two pay grades, and then it goes up for right now every year for the first 5 years, and then every 2 years after that. And there are different locations that have cost of living adjustments because it costs a lot more to live in Bethel than it does in Anchorage. There are locations that don't have cost of living adjustments that probably should. And there's overtime, as JP and probably Joe have benefit from, I guess. I'm going to put it that way. Has to be some benefit to not having any free time. That jumps up your salary quite a lot. They are currently working on some of the positions might be able to go up to what's called an advanced caseworker level 3. I'm sure Joe and JP have heard that is they actually finally are working on that. I'm hoping it happens to you guys soon. But there's pay, but there's also medical, vision, and dental insurance. I love our medical insurance and our vision and dental insurance. It's really good from my point of view. I've worked for small businesses with nothing, so it's nice being able to not worry about going bankrupt if I need to go to the doctor or be able to get regular dental. I think JP's mentioned he's benefited before. Joe, you like our medical? I don't know where you've worked before, so.
Yeah, no, I love the medical. The vision and dental, I would say, is solid. I would say it's pretty good. Medical is outstanding. Like, I have nothing bad to say about our medical plan, but
But and of course we have life insurance and retirement plans. People have been here a lot longer, have better retirement plans. I've not experienced those ones. I only know our one, and it's good for me. You have opportunities for advancement, obviously promotions, advanced caseworkers, supervisors, but even other positions within the agency. There are program coordinators, project assistants. You can go up to protective service managers, who are kind of like the more very high level, looking over a region. We have holidays and lots of leave. For me, it's lots of leave. Starts off at 4 weeks and it goes up as you stay with the state for longer. And I like having at least one holiday a month. Do either of you guys get flexible working options? Yeah.
Very flexible.
yeah, and say I have like an RDO where I work a full
Mhm.
4-day schedule.
Yeah, they usually offer it on a kind of case by case basis, but generally there's a lot of flexible working options. The training, as Joe says, depends on where you are, but there is technically training for new employees, skills. And I think JP, was it last time you were saying it was changing?
Yeah, we're revamping skills as we're realizing that we got a wide variety of people applying for the job. And it used to be skills was created for people that had degrees in social work or human services. And I think we're looking at incorporating a lot more of the legal background, and a lot more of the customer service background, trauma informed perspective. And we're changing skills to be more, right now it's 2 weeks, and we're looking at making it 3 weeks with a week in the middle where it's all hands-on. You get to go to court with people, you get to go on caseworker visits, you get to go see how this stuff is done in real time, because that's one of the biggest issues we've been trying to tackle, almost as with anywhere I've ever worked, is that you get all this training and then you go to work and find out how to really do it. And you get the training covers the ideal scenario, and everything you would do if you had all the time in the world to do it. And so you get there and you go, oh, this is a little different. So we, without over talking it, we're getting a lot more caseworker input on what kind of training should be developed and what would be most helpful. So that's been nice.
That is good to hear,
Mhm.
because that helps.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the basis of skills is like the way I've always told workers. It's like it lays a very theoretical foundation and I'm going off of how I felt and how multiple new workers come out feeling with no practical. There's nothing practical that they learn from skills. Like JP said, this like imaginable, like obtainable thing is what skills teaches, and people come back and go, I literally am not prepared for this job. That taught me nothing. And that I've seen multiple people quit after returning from skills because they have this like almost like crisis meltdown, because that was their reality of this is what was supposed to teach me what I'm supposed to do, and I still know nothing. And that's why I think really how long workers last depends on the office culture and the willingness of seasoned workers to take people under their wings and do in-field training. Like I know in Kenai that we've personally just kind of went to that, where my supervisor tries to schedule their skills session a ways out so that they can go out in the field with me and other workers before even going to skills, so that it's like in a very relaxed environment. They're not carrying a caseload, and it seems to be proving very successful. But as far as once they come back from skills getting that caseload, there's not as much anxiety because I've done all of it with them before they even went there. So like JP said, like if they could get that into skills, that would be very beneficial, so that there's more of a practical piece to skills, not just this theoretical piece of skills. So.
And I'd like to say people going into this work anywhere they go, whether they come to Alaska or someone else, their success is going to largely depend on their willingness to ask questions and to just reach out. I know that's been one of my biggest assets as a new caseworker, was just sending emails out to the entire group. It was probably obnoxious, but I often found that when I got the answer back, a whole bunch of people that had been here longer than me were happy that that question was answered for them as well. So being willing to be a new guy and just say, hey, I'm new. Sorry, I don't know. I'm throwing this question out there, will exponentially make your learning time a lot shorter, and I think increase your quality of life at work and your relationship with your coworkers, because everybody loves giving advice and sharing knowledge. So I'm happy to be the recipient of that, and I think that's a good asset to have.
Actually, JP, that's good advice for all jobs. Always ask all the questions when you start. That's when you get to be stupid.
Shocked. I was very shocked, JP, to find out how many people don't do that here. Well, like here especially, because I was also like you. I was that person where like, I'm going to annoy people so that I can like learn what I'm doing. And it was very odd to me when I like found out how many people don't ask questions. Because like my first question when someone's asked, I'm like, well, did you ask your supervisor? No. Why not? Why didn't you just ask? Like,
Ask questions.
Very interesting.
Yeah. So there's a quality. Be willing to ask questions. Be willing to be the stupid person. It's always good. Okay. So like we said, there's locations all over, and every location is different. There's something for everybody. And the one that the JPN show, the why, that keeps people in the job, is the benefit to contribute to the well-being of your community and families. If you move here and this is your community, that's what will keep you going. Okay. So minimum qualifications. They used to be a degree in a specific field like social work, human services, justice, but they changed it to be competency based. It says on there, it's a combination of knowledge, skills, abilities, and behaviors. So for protective service specialists 1s and 2s, we're looking at analytical thinking and problem solving, customer service, integrity, honesty, interpersonal skills, oral communication, writing. Whenever you look at one of our job posts, it lists out what they're looking at for each of these. I think under interpersonal skills, it covers something that's really important, which is, it's being able to deal with individuals who are difficult, hostile, or distressed, and relating to people from different backgrounds and situations, and being sensitive to culture, race, gender, and disabilities, which is a big deal for us for the most part. You guys got anything to add to the competencies? Because I know this is not how you guys were hired. So it was different when you guys got in. But this is why we're getting a different variety of people, because there's no one way to meet these. It's whatever, when the hiring panel determines that an applicant meets these minimum requirements, and they can hire them at 1 or 2 level. So
I think if you can learn to be more curious than judgmental, you do well. If your curiosity always trumps your judgment when it comes to helping people, then I think that's a big asset as far as skills to have.
Yeah, and really being able to have the ability to self-reflect, to identify personal biases so that you can check those at the door when you're working with families, especially coming from Alaska. Things are just different up here, and you have to be willing to learn that and accept that and work with families about that, and striving to become culturally competent, right? And the way I explain that is not necessarily the ability to become an expert in multiple cultures, but the willingness to listen, learn, and respect those from different cultures is huge. and understanding, this was one of the things that I had to really understand when I first came from that criminal justice background, is that, what was I going to say? It's something along the lines of, just because a family's doing something different than like what I would maybe expect to see within my household, that doesn't mean it's unsafe. Like, there's just a huge difference in that. And I think that's at least in INA, that's something I have to really help teach workers as well. The difference between different and unsafe. So that's a big learning curve for a lot of people. So just having that open mind and willingness to learn is critical.
Awesome. So we're nearly at the end. State of Alaska, all positions are applied to via Workplace Alaska. A lot of different state agencies, not just Alaska, use this, but all state jobs are applied through this. It's an application. You create your profile, and that lets you apply for the jobs. All I'd suggest is you read the job postings carefully, answer the supplemental questions like their interview questions, and remember to fill out everything completely and double check it before you hit submit. And if you're using education, remember to add your transcripts. And that is us. Do you guys have anything to add for final thoughts?
Alaska is an awesome place to work. If you're going to choose this field, come to Alaska and try it out.
Like it, JP. Joe?
Yeah, as far as, I guess I haven't seen the application process in 5 years, but I would definitely recommend checking out our website, looking up like key concepts, terms, because that would be very good in creating,
It'll help them tailor their application.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, I don't know if it's still on like a point system, but I know it used to be, and you get points when you do your homework before applying. So do your homework before applying and look online and check that out. And I would say another big thing too is knowing boundaries. That's a huge deal that people in this field don't have, and it burns people out. Making sure that you're able to maintain personal boundaries, leave work at work, home at home. I mean, that really helps increase longevity in any job, really. Like, not
Taking
just
care of yourself. Yeah.
Yes, like self-care and personal boundaries is a must if you want to have a shot in longevity in this job. So, but yeah, no, I would highly recommend it if you're up for adventure. Alaska is an awesome place. That's why I came back after leaving for 7 years for college. So definitely recommend it.
Okay. Ashlyn?
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. 1, I want to visit Alaska now. 2, you guys do amazing work. And 3, thank you so much for taking time to share all of the insights. So Jen, Joe, and JP, thank you so much. I know it's probably more than you wanted. So thank you so much for sharing this with our students, and come visit South Dakota if you ever feel like it.
My pleasure. I've been through the Black Hills. You got some cool areas there.
All right. So we got one of you. Perfect.
Mhm.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. And you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, you
Yeah,
too.
Thank you
too.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.